Hello everyone, and welcome to a RigER webinar number 68, since the time when we started counting them. Today's topic is very dear to our heart, and it's a very known and a very demanded topic for many of you who have been using RigER and asking a few questions on how to do certain things in our system, as well as if you haven't been using it but were curious on how to manage inventory in an operations management system like RigER. Today's topic exactly is for this purpose. We're going to be explaining all these little details as well as major things about the inventory management in RigER. So let me just read it out. Managing RigER, managing oilfield services, or managing inventory efficiently from purchasing to disposal. A mouthful, but a very important one. So thanks for bearing with me. Okay, so my name is Nikolai, and here I'm on the screen. Just a few things just to make sure that we are all connected in a webinar session today. So raise a hand if you can hear me, which I think you can, but it would help me to see a hand go up. That will give me an idea, and thank you very much. I do see hands now going up, so it means that everything seems to be working just fine. Let's keep going then. A few slides just to preempt while everybody is logging in and kind of pouring the coffee or just unpacking the lunch. A few general slides, but very important ones for us to communicate at every webinar. So we all are in social media these days for one or another reason. So since we are in a business environment, so we are very supportive of LinkedIn. And please do, if you're not following us, we're connecting with our team on LinkedIn. Log in and actually do that, because it's one of the best venues to connect with us and follow the latest news. And we're very proud to see the growth in the number of the people that are following us. So thank you very much if you already are one of the followers and connected to us. So today's agenda, and we have a couple of speakers, so is going to be specifically dedicated to the inventory management. So Gleb Kovitz, as VP of Operations, and Malcolm Matsov are going to be diving deep into the topic. And the agenda includes the following items: inventory card and structure, inventory purchases, bill of materials, that's a very important one, inventory consumption, rental tickets, food tickets, repair card, inventory movements, inventory sales and price setup, inventory reports, and of course at the end we'll conclude with a few recommendations on how to best manage your inventory in RigER. And on that note, let me pass the microphone to Gleb, who's going to dive right into it.
Thank you very much, Nikolai. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gleb Kovitz. I'm VP of Operations here in RigER, and I'm going to start diving deeper to this topic of the webinar, which is the inventory, and that's quite essential part of the almost every company out there on the oilfield business, because everybody tracks some kind of parts, consumables, supplies, etc. So we're going to talk about this today. And specifically, we're talking about how to track these components in the RigER database. So there are a number of different ways and flexible options how to set up your items in RigER. You may already know that you may have rental units in the system that are tracked individually and by unit numbers, by serial numbers, but inventory usually don't have any kind of specific unit numbers. And it's usually tracked by quantities. So under inventory in the RigER database, we mean goods, materials, or some kind of consumables. It may be supplies, it may be parts of your rental items, and something other. But taking it into account, when you create a new item in the RigER database, you have an option to select a type of this item, of this record actually. And if you are entering inventories, so you can select from either goods or materials. From the tracking standpoint in the RigER database, it's essentially the same thing, but it a little bit allows you to understand what you track in terms of the nature of these items. So if it's a finished goods or some kind of products, you can enter these as goods. Or if it's something that is like raw materials or bulk materials, so you can enter these as a type material. So again, it doesn't impact your tracking capabilities in the database much, but it's just a little bit differentiate your nature of the units. And also you have a model field where you can enter additional information about a particular part or consumable, and that will be also reflected in the name of the item if you click on this model button. So it just copies to the name field. But again, it can be optional. You can leave this field blank if you don't want to fill it out with any information, and just have a name field filled out. Also, on the item card, you have a Supplier Info tab where you can enter information about your suppliers or vendors and the part number on the vendor side, so how they track these items. And also there can be a description on the vendor side and unit of measure. So by entering the list of the suppliers, you then will be able to easily select from which particular supplier you're gonna purchase these items, and you can make one of these suppliers as a default. So by clicking on the set default vendor, this default vendor will be selected within next purchases. And we have inventory dashboard. When you start the software and you open the application, you see the home page, and usually it's a rental units dashboard, but then you can switch to the parts dashboard and see all the parts on one screen. So parts on hand or quantities ordered. And on the right hand side, you see that you may have different parts in a different departments by quantities, and also you see how many you have ordered from which vendor and when it's going to be delivered to your shop, specific shop. So now let's talk how do you purchase inventory and how do you deliver these quantities into the database. We have two ways how it should be done, or it can be done. The first way is a standard purchase workflow when you have 3 documents generated one by one in a sequence, and that's a purchase order when you just order some kind of supplies and you send it to your vendor. But then when you receive an invoice for this order, you create a purchase invoice in the RigER system where you actually enter all these details from the vendor's purchase invoice. And the final document is a bill of lading where you actually receive the supplies or consumables, and they are brought to your inventory stocks in the RigER software, in the database. So the bill of lading is essential document because it actually reflects your inventory incoming or outgoing. If you return the inventory, that's also an option. You see on the right hand side of the bill of lading document, you have a radio button, in or return. So if you'd like to return some quantity, you can generate a new bill of lading document and switch to the return type of the document, and this quantity will be definitely written off from your stocks in the database, and you will have a history that you have returned these many items. But the second way how you can do purchases in the RigER database, we call it fast purchase. The difference between those two ways is that fast purchase is usually used when you just purchase something real quick and deliver to your shop, And you don't have to separate these three documents, I mean, purchase order, purchase invoice, and bill of lading by dates, by different dates. So everything is done in one date. In this case, it's much easier to generate a fast purchase order. But if we're coming back for a second to the standard purchase workflow, these three documents can be different dates. For example, if you purchase 100 units of some supply, and these 100 units are delivered to your shop in a portions, say 50 units delivered today, 20 units delivered tomorrow, and 30 units delivered the day after. So these will be 3 bill of ladings generated under one purchase order or one purchase invoice. Or you may have 2 purchase invoices if you pay by portions. But in case of the fast purchase, the system generates 3 documents for you in a sequence per one fast purchase document. So essentially, that's the quick way how you purchase equipment or any consumables and deliver them to the inventory in the database. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you just a real quick demo of how it works in the RigER software, so you can see step by step the fast purchase workflow. To access the fast purchase tool, you need to go to the purchases module and locate the fast purchase document. Click on that and create a new document. When you create a new document, you need to select the date of the document, the purchase invoice from your vendor, and the vendor itself. We also may select the tax schedule, and we select the department where these equipment or consumables or supplies will be delivered to, and select the delivery date. Now enter the items in the list. So I can select the hand sanitizer in a quantity of 10 items. And I put the price of these hand sanitizers. Also, we can enter another item. Say it will be a diesel, and we purchase 100 gallons. And the price is $2 per gallon. So we are done here. Once all the equipment or consumables is entered, we post the fast purchase document and we click on Generate button, which performs and generates 3 documents in a sequence: purchase order, purchase invoice, and bill of lading. So your equipment or consumables are purchased and delivered to the inventory in the database. You can also check all these 3 documents by clicking on them and check or change any kind of details on that document, post and save it. And you can do this with other 2 documents. So again, just to summarize quickly, the fast purchase is your some kind of automation tool for generating 3 documents quicker. But again, you have to work with these 3 documents separately. So for example, if you want to change the purchase invoice status of the document, say it's paid or for signature or email, something else, so you have to go to the purchase invoice document itself and work with these documents separately. The same applies to the bill of lading document or purchase order. But fast purchase is just your automation tool to create fast purchases. All right, so let's move on. And another good feature of the goods and materials types of items in the RigER software is the safety stock field, where you can specify the minimal stock quantity that you'd like to keep in your database or in your actual shops. So you just tell the system what the quantity will be considered as the minimal, and the users will be notified that these kind of items should be reordered and purchased some quantity of these items. So when you set up a safety stock on the item level, then the system starts analyzing how many items do you have at every single moment of time. And if you go under the minimal stock quantity, the system will show you the reorder action in the report. The report is called consumables minimum stock quantity. So you can find this report in your report module, and you see that if you have items that should be reordered, the system will tell you to do that. So that's a useful tool to just keep in mind how many items do you have on stock and what should be reordered. Now let's move on to the next topic, which is the bill of materials, and I'm going to ask Michael to talk about this functionality.
Thank you, Gleb. Hello, everyone. This is Michael, and we'll talk about bill of materials. So sometimes we have the situation when we need to combine several items together, several parts together, and build the final product. In this case, say, for example, we like to prepare the repair kit or maintenance kit for our rental unit and combine together several parts. In this case, we have, for example, 4 parts and 1 product, combine it together, and we can do this operation using a special document which we call bill of materials. And in some cases, we can add services to this process and track services separately. So the final item, the final product will have item type goods, and parts should have item type materials. So bill of materials designed to combine several parts together and produce a particular final product. And here we can have several notes about particular material part numbers available as an optional thing as well. And the main idea is that we convert several parts and consume several parts and build one product. So consume multiple items and build one. And definitely we need to identify which shop we will use for that operation.
And I will just quickly add that the cost of a new product created from the multiple items will be the sum of these individual parts costs.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see how the any consumption cost build in RigER. So how we calculate the prices and how we can check and understand the average cost. In RigER, we use weighted average cost as a standard cost definition of the part, and it's very simple. If we have similar purchase price and consume this part, which we have, say, for example, day 1 purchase 10 items at price of $25 and consume 1 item at day 3, so the cost of goods sold will be $25. Then we move forward and see that we purchased day 5 another 60 items at $23 each. So, and then in bill of materials, we will have an weighted average cost 23.26 because what we do every single time, we calculate a weighted average cost per in each transaction within a particular department. So in this case, we have 69 as a final balance, and when you consume 2, the average price, the total cost of consumption will be $46.52.
So, Michael, it looks like we recalculate the average cost on the sales event, right? Or sorry, on the purchasing event.
Every single transaction, which will be every single document, will generate that kind of recalculations.
Okay, good.
And definitely when we have more and more transactions, so the weighted average cost will change every single time when we'll have a new purchases, or when we have a new price, and again, the total cost of consumption will really depends on number of items you have at the balance and value of those items.
All right, good. Let's move on, and let me show you how we can consume inventory in the RigER database. So one of the first documents that you start every single job with is the rental service agreement, where we set up the services and parts. And in this case, we use materials like diesel, light tower service kit, or hand sanitizer. And on the rental service agreement, we specify the prices that will be applied to the customer invoice. So then we move on and we generate rental tickets. It can be both delivery or return rental ticket, where we can also add parts if they are used during the job or setting up the equipment on the location. And on the rental ticket, we put in the quantity, number of items that are consumed, and the price will be hidden. On that screen, you just see the test version of the document with the price shows up, but definitely in your database it will be hidden because we control the prices on the rental service agreement level. The next document that uses materials or parts is the field ticket, which is specifically designed to provide services on the location. But we do understand that along with the services, you can use the materials. So again, you can add materials to the list, specify the quantity of these materials, and they will be written off from your stocks once they are used in these two documents. So another option is to consume the parts in the repair events. So we have a setting that you can build a repair list or a repair template for some kind of item. So on that specific example, you see that we have air compressor rental unit, but we build the list of materials that are used when we repair this air compressor, or we maintain it, or we service it. So once you generate a repair card for the air compressor, or in this case, it's light tower service kit. Anyway, so in the repair card, you will have these 3 units, parts in the list with prices. And once you use these parts in the repair card, they will also be written off from the stocks in the database. And one of the latest option how to control the quantity of your inventory is the item disposal. So if there is an event that you need to write off or just throw it out some kind of items, then you can generate item disposal document, and this document will again consume items from the inventory balance. Another option to control your inventory and to move it around your departments or shops or yards is the intercompany transfer document. So this document is pretty simple in its essence, because you just specify the from department and to department. So the like a movement direction, and then you build a list of items that you'd like to move. So the date of this document will be the date that the quantity of the items will be switched from one shop to another. And you also have an option to select the carrier checkbox to specify the information about the transportation unit or transportation company that are moving your units. Or you can use your own transportation units and specify the field technician, truck, and trailer. Inventory turnover report shows you the history of these movements or consumption of the items. So you see that in this report, we can see different documents that used our units. So it's either sales or bill of lading when we buy or purchase equipment, and field ticket when we consume it. So please use this report, which is very helpful to understand how your units are maintained, the balances of the units are maintained in the database. So we also can sell our consumables or supplies, and for this purpose we use a few documents. So the first one is the price list, where you can set up prices for your consumables, and these will be a standard prices for all the clients. But then you can create a particular sales order and change the prices for a specific client if they want to have some kind of different prices. So you generate a sales order in the sales module, and then you move on and generate a sales invoice. So in this way, you will just sell equipment to do the direct sell, and you can have different prices and definitely different quantities. Another option is to sell the equipment if that's a part of the rental job. In this case, when you use the consumables in the field ticket or rental tickets, then when you generate a rental invoice for the customer, these services and these parts will be included in the final invoice and sold to the customer. And let's take a look at the inventory reports that will be very helpful to control the inventory stocks. So different reports are just show you pretty much the same information but from the different angles. For example, if we'll take a look at the inventory report, it shows you the information as of specific date, and it shows you the quantity that you have as of this specific date in different statuses. Definitely for the consumables, you probably will have ready to rent status, because consumables cannot be, say, in their rework or assembled, but they can be sold or sometimes scrapped if you do the item disposal. Inventory gross profit margin report shows you your profitability of the transactions with parts or consumables. So it shows you the average average price for a period of time for a specific item, and the revenue that it has generated, and the cost of goods sold based on the purchase prices or bill of materials, and it calculates also the gross profit margin in a percentage view. Inventory on hand report can be built in two dimensions or two kind of structures. So first of all, it shows you the inventory on hand by locations and then by items, or you can build it by items and locations. So for example, if you want to see where you have how many items you have on the different shops, you can build item and by location. Or if you want to see the balance of a particular location, then you'll use the first option. And inventory purchases report just summarizes all your purchase order and purchase invoices and bill of ladings into one report, and shows you by vendors how many purchases did you do during the period of time, and what was the quantity and the amount of purchases. And another report, which is inventory turnover report. I showed you previously this one, but this one is designed to show you how many you had at the beginning of the period, then how many you have purchased, how many you have consumed, and what was the closing balance as of specific date. All right, so we're moving to the end of this presentation, and we'd like to share our recommendations or best practices how to utilize the inventory function in the RigER software. So the first observation that we've seen with many clients, that parts and materials can be used in a different setups, and it depends on your approach, how you'd like to track it. Because some companies, they use hundreds of small pieces of parts during the day or a week, and it's very time-consuming process to maintain the proper quantity with everyday purchases or everyday consumptions. So they choose to track parts as just a service. So yeah, when you create an item, for example, you create hand sanitizer, and you can set up this as not as a good or material, but you can set it up as a service item. So why we sometimes suggest to use this approach? Because with services, you don't have to purchase it. You definitely purchase only items as a good materials, but services can be used as many as you need during the day in any document. So you don't have to purchase services. But in case of the parts and materials and goods, you need to perform purchases every time you do it physically and maintain your actual quantities in the system. So consider this option excuse me, consider this option to use the service as for parts if you need to do it pretty frequent. And again, as I said previously, you can use this consumables minimum stock quantity report to see how many you need to reorder.
And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us through the email on the website and the phone number in this presentation, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions and maybe show an in-depth and in-person demo. And here's how you book a demo if you haven't seen us before and haven't seen RigER in full force, so to speak. Okay. So on that note, let me then thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, and we will be in touch with you on next Thursday with another topic. Stay tuned.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you next week.